Welcome to the latest episode of Gina's Gems. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're here today to talk about brain health and the impact on the workforce. With me is our CHRO, Sharon Werner.
Thank you, Gina, for inviting me today.
Of course, I'm so glad you're here. You know, when you and I first met many years ago, it was over our shared interest and passion around mental health. So it's really special to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sharon, you and I talked last week about this topic, and given what's happening in our country and our world, I think that we can all agree it's been a chaotic year so far. I personally can feel my nervous system elevated oftentimes. How do you see this manifested in the workplace?
Yeah, the stress is real. And what the impact to our workers is that we might notice that people appear withdrawn, or maybe increased interpersonal conflict, or even absenteeism becomes an issue the more stress people are under. Anxiety has really reached epidemic levels in our country, especially among younger workers who may not have the perspective that we gain through life experience. If workers are facing high levels of prolonged stress, worry, and anxiety, that really takes a toll on our brain, the brain and the body. We rarely think about brain health, but it is so important for total mental wellness. When our brain is overtaxed, we have a hard time focusing, accessing long-term memories. And that's required for really good decision making, as well as creativity for those innovative breakthrough ideas.
I think I can relate. We can all probably relate to all of that. So here's an interesting tidbit for you. I read that experiencing stress within 2 hours of eating will tax the body's ability to digest properly. And it's the equivalent of eating an additional 100 calories. Not happy to hear that. So people under stress are having a harder time losing weight due to this inefficiency. So what are some ways that you suggest that we can balance the body?
Yes, our spiked cortisol is the body's reaction to conserve energy because it's an evolutionary function of wanting to prepare us for fight or flight. And so really there are some things that we have within our control to slow that down and to make our body be more efficient. I've come across some really interesting research by two renowned neuroscientists, Dr. Judy Suzuki, she's a dean at NYU, and Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, a Harvard distinguished professor and researcher. They advocate some practical things that we can do for brain health, and these are all superpowers that are very easy for us to engage. The first is get enough sleep. So what does enough mean? Enough means we're well rested and we're not feeling exhausted during the day. If you're exhausted, it's an indication that your brain is working really hard to regulate the body. Sleep is required to purge neurotoxins. We don't think about that often, but just like we have a self-cleaning appliance, we've got a self-cleaning brain. We just need to give it a chance to do that during our sleep cycle. Next, they advocate drink enough water. Insufficient water manifests as fatigue, not thirst. So if in the middle of the afternoon you're reaching for that cup of coffee, you might consider a tall glass of water instead to hydrate and give the chance for the body to get its energy back through hydration. Next, they talk about healthy gut equals healthy brain. And how do we get a healthy gut? It's about eating real food, minimally processed, lots of fruits and vegetables of all sorts of colors, olive oil, fatty fish, nuts that are rich in omega-3s. Certainly exercise, not only is good for cardio, exercise is good for the brain. Get outside, move your body, get some fresh air and sunshine. And then the last point that they advocate is reframing anxiety. We can't prevent anxiety from the life that we're living, but we can take some actions to reframe it, limiting our consumption of breaking news and social media, or reaching for more positive thoughts that come into that inner critic, or practicing yoga and meditation to calm ourselves down. Invest in relationships, the connections that we have with the people in our lives and our pets. Gina, what do you find most helpful to enhance your brain health?
I'd say most of the above. I've recently gotten very focused on sleep. I'm an 8-hour-a-night gal. I think it's super critical. And I notice as I'm aging, how much more important that is. I try to exercise 5 days a week. I do meditate, although not nearly enough. Even just a short walk, I find, can do wonders.
That's
So
right.
I agree with all the points that you hit on. But one point that you mentioned, reframing anxiety. I want to dive a bit deeper into that. That seems to be a biggie for most, but especially, as you mentioned earlier, the younger generation. So what have you found to be helpful to employees in the workplace to manage their stress?
The one last insight I want to share with your viewers is about brain health is linked to self-appreciation and, dare I say, self-love. I often hear colleagues in my company state, I'm really hard on myself. And they will say that with such a tone that they're either having great pride in the fact that they hold themselves to high standard, or with regret, like it's so ingrained that it can't be changed. But neither is true. Being hard on yourself is a choice that you can change. What I've noticed is that the people who give grace to themselves and recognize their own shortcomings and have a healthy appreciation for their gifts tend to experience less anxiety than those who are critical of themselves and others. Some fear that this self-appreciation might lead to having a big ego. The opposite is really true. When we let go of judging ourselves, we typically project confidence and humility. A big ego can be a cover-up for insecurity. By reducing internal anxiety, and when we appreciate ourselves, we are more likely to be kind and extend grace to the people around us. In self-love, we generate a positive ripple of energy across our colleagues, our families, and our communities. I highly recommend it.
I love that. I think that's so accurate and not typically what you would hear, but true. And dare I say, I believe that grace comes with age, for whatever that's worth. Well, Sharon, thank you so much. This is a topic that I could spend hours discussing. You know, this was one that's so near and dear to both of us. So I really appreciate you sharing your insights and perspective. And for those employers that are watching this episode, if you would like to hear more about workplace mental health and brain health strategies, don't hesitate to reach out. We will see you soon for the next gem. Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Gina.